Judge Marion Hayes woke up that Saturday morning with a smile on her face. It had been 3 weeks since she'd closed the biggest case of her career, and her body was finally starting to relax. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for months was beginning to fade. She stretched in bed, listening to the birds outside her window, and thought about how badly she needed this day off. Her niece, little Bella, was already awake. Marion could hear her humming in the guest room, probably playing with those dolls she'd brought from home. The 8-year-old had arrived 2 days ago for a summer visit, and Marion had promised her something special. Today was the day. Auntie. Bella burst into the room, her braids bouncing. "Are we really going swimming today?" Marion laughed. "Yes, sweetheart. Go get your swimsuit on." The pool had cost her $200 for a summer membership. She'd signed up online, filled out all the forms, and received her confirmation email within hours. Riverside Community Pool was supposed to be one of the nicest facilities in the area. The photos online showed crystal clear water, modern facilities, and plenty of space for families. Marion had thought it would be perfect for Bella's visit. She made breakfast while Bella got ready. Pancakes, Bella's favorite. The little girl ate them so fast that Marion had to remind her to slow down 3 times. "The pool isn't going anywhere," she said, wiping syrup off Bella's chin. But Bella's excitement was contagious. By the time they loaded up the car with towels, sunscreen, and snacks, Marion found herself looking forward to the day too. It had been years since she'd just relaxed by a pool. Her job kept her busy, always reading case files, preparing for trials, making decisions that affected people's lives. Today she would just be Aunt Marion, nothing more. The drive took 20 minutes. They passed through Marion's neighborhood, then into an area where the houses got bigger and the lawns got greener. Bella pressed her nose against the window, amazed by a house with a fountain in the front yard. "Do people really live like that?" she asked. "Some people do," Marion said. When they pulled into the parking lot, Marion noticed it was packed. Good, she thought. Bella would have other kids to play with. They grabbed their bags and walked toward the entrance. The facility was even nicer in person than in the photos. Modern glass doors, fresh paint, flowers planted along the walkway. But something felt off the moment they stepped inside. The woman at the front desk looked up and her smile disappeared. She stared at Marion and Bella for a long moment before speaking. "Can I help you?" Her voice was flat, almost cold. "Yes, we're here to swim. I'm a member." Marion pulled out her phone to show her membership confirmation. The woman barely glanced at it. "I'll need to see identification." Marion found that odd. The website hadn't mentioned anything about showing ID at the entrance. But she pulled out her driver's license anyway. The woman studied it for a long time, then looked at the phone screen, then back at the license. "This will take a minute to verify," she said, disappearing into a back office. Bella tugged on Marion's hand. "Why is it taking so long?" "Just a mix-up, honey. It'll be fine." But Marion's instincts were telling her something different. After 15 years on the bench, she'd developed a good sense for when something wasn't right. The way that woman had looked at them, the way her friendliness had vanished so completely. The woman finally returned. "Everything seems to be in order," she said, though she didn't sound happy about it. "The pool is through those doors." They walked through and Marion felt every eye in the place turned toward them. The pool area was beautiful, surrounded by lounge chairs and umbrellas. There must have been 50 people there, maybe more. Families everywhere. Children laughing and splashing. Parents relaxing in the sun. Every single person was white. Marion's stomach tightened. She'd seen this before, felt this before, but she pushed the feeling down. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe the black families came on different days, or maybe they just hadn't arrived yet. Bella didn't notice. She was already running toward the water, her eyes wide with excitement. "Auntie, look how big it is!" Marion followed, trying to ignore the stares. She found 2 empty lounge chairs and started setting down their bags. A woman on the next chair over quickly gathered her things and moved to the other side of the pool. Marion pretended not to notice. "Can I get in now?" Bella asked, practically bouncing. "Let me put sunscreen on you first." While Marion rubbed sunscreen on Bella's shoulders, she noticed a group of people gathered near the facility office. They were looking in her direction and talking to each other. One of them, a heavy-set man in a polo shirt with a manager's badge, was shaking his head about something. "All done," Marion said, trying to keep her voice cheerful. "Stay in the shallow end where I can see you, okay?" Bella ran off and jumped into the water with a huge splash. Marion watched her surface, laughing and wiping water from her eyes. At least one of them was having fun. Marion settled into her chair and tried to relax. She'd brought a book, a mystery novel she'd been meaning to read for months. But she couldn't focus on the words. She kept noticing the looks, the whispers. A couple walked past, and the woman clutched her purse tighter as if Marion might reach out and grab it. 10 minutes passed. Bella was having the time of her life, swimming and diving for coins that Marion had tossed in for her. But Marion couldn't shake the tension building in her chest. Then the manager started walking toward her. The heavy-set man from before with 3 other staff members following behind him. Marion sat up straighter, already knowing what was coming. "Excuse me," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I need to see your membership credentials." Marion took a slow breath. "I showed them at the front desk. I need to see them again." She pulled out her phone, found the confirmation email, and handed it to him. He looked at it with an expression like he'd just bitten into something sour. He zoomed in on the text, then scrolled through the entire email, clearly hoping to find some problem with it. "When did you purchase this?" he asked. "Last week? It's all there in the email." He handed back her phone without apology, without even a thank you, just turned and walked away, the other staff members following like a little parade. But Marion noticed they didn't go far. They gathered about 30 feet away, still watching her. In the pool, Bella had found a beach ball someone had left behind. She was tossing it up and catching it, completely unaware of the tension surrounding her aunt. Marion envied that innocence. In a few years, Bella would learn what it felt like to walk into a room and feel unwelcome. But not today. Today she got to just be a kid at a pool. Marion tried to read her book again. She made it through half a page before she heard more whispers. A couple sitting across the pool were talking to the manager now, both of them gesturing in her direction. The manager nodded seriously, like they were reporting a crime. More people were pulling out their phones. At first, Marion thought they were just checking messages, but then she realized some of them were pointing their cameras at her and Bella, not even trying to hide it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her colleague, Judge Peterson. "Enjoy your day off. You've earned it." If only he knew, Marion thought. She typed back a simple thanks and put her phone away. Bella came running up, dripping water everywhere. "Auntie, did you see me swim underwater?" "I held my breath for so long." "I saw, baby." "You did great." Marion handed her a towel. "You want a snack?" They shared some apple slices and crackers. Bella chattered away about how this was the best pool ever, how she wanted to come back every day. Marion smiled and nodded, but her eyes kept drifting to the manager, who was now talking on his phone while staring directly at them. Something bad was about to happen. Marion could feel it in her bones. She'd spent enough time in courtrooms to recognize when a situation was about to turn ugly. Every instinct told her to grab Bella and leave, but another part of her refused. She had every right to be here. She'd paid for a membership. She wasn't doing anything wrong. Why should she leave? Bella finished her snack and jumped back in the water. Marion watched her swim, trying to memorize this moment of pure joy before everything fell apart. Because it was about to fall apart. Marion was certain of that now. She just didn't know how bad it would get. Marion didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes after the manager had walked away, she saw him returning. But this time he wasn't alone. 2 police officers walked beside him, their uniforms crisp and dark against the bright summer day. Their hands rested casually on their belts, and they wore sunglasses that made it impossible to see their eyes. Marion's heart sank. She dealt with police officers countless times in her courtroom. She knew the good ones and the bad ones. These 2 had that particular swagger that made her nervous, the kind that said they'd already decided who was right and who was wrong before hearing a single word. The manager pointed at Marion from about 20 feet away. The officers nodded and started walking faster. Everyone at the pool had stopped what they were doing now. Parents pulled their children out of the water. People gathered in small groups, phones already out and recording. Bella was still swimming, oblivious. Marion wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." The first officer was tall with a reddish face and blonde hair cut military short. His name tag read Officer Garrett. "We've received a complaint that you're trespassing on private property." Marion stood up slowly, keeping her movements calm and deliberate. "Officers, I'm a paid member of this facility. I have my confirmation right here. She reached for her phone on the lounge chair. The second officer, shorter and stockier with dark hair, stepped forward quickly. Keep your hands where we can see them. I'm just getting my phone to show you my membership, Marion said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. It's right there on the chair. Step away from the chair, Officer Torres said. That was his name tag. Torres. Marion made a mental note, already thinking like the judge she was. She stepped back, hands slightly raised. My phone has my membership confirmation. I've already shown it to the staff here. I have every right to be at this pool. The manager, Richard, spoke up. She's claiming to be a member, but we have a policy about who can use this facility. He said it carefully, like he'd practiced the words. This is a private community pool for residents only. I am aware of the membership requirements, Marion said. I purchased a summer membership last week. I received confirmation. I showed my credentials at the front desk. Everything is legitimate. Officer Garrett picked up Marion's phone without asking permission. He scrolled through it, taking his time. Marion wanted to tell him he had no right to search her phone without a warrant, but she also knew that saying such things often made situations worse. This could be fake, Garrett said, showing the screen to his partner. It's not fake. You can call the number on the confirmation email and verify it. But Torres was already shaking his head. We've been informed this is a whites-only facility. You need to leave immediately. The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Marion heard gasps from the crowd. Several people's phones were definitely recording now. She saw the little red recording dots on at least 5 screens. That's illegal, Marion said clearly. You cannot enforce racial segregation. It's been illegal since 1964. I'm sure you both know that. Bella had noticed something was wrong now. She'd stopped swimming and was standing in the shallow end, water up to her waist, watching her aunt talk to the police officers. Ma'am, we're not going to debate law with you, Garrett said. You need to leave or you'll be arrested for trespassing. I'm not trespassing. I have a legal membership. Marion kept her voice calm, but inside she was screaming. This couldn't be happening. Not in 2025, not at a public pool. I want to speak to your supervisor. We are the supervisors here, Torres said. Now gather your things and leave peacefully or we'll have to remove you by force. Marion looked at Bella, who was starting to look scared. Other children in the pool were staring. Parents were pulling them away as if whatever was happening might be contagious. Fine, Marion said. I'll leave. But I want both of your badge numbers and I'll be filing a formal complaint. She started walking toward her bag to collect her things and call Bella out of the pool. It should have been over. She was cooperating, doing exactly what they asked. But then everything went wrong. As Marion bent down to pick up her bag, Officer Garrett apparently decided she was moving too quickly or in a threatening way. She's going for something, he shouted. Before Marion could process what was happening, both officers lunged at her. Torres grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. The pain was immediate and sharp. Garrett pushed her forward and Marion felt herself falling. She tried to catch herself, but with her arm pinned behind her, she couldn't. Her face hit the concrete beside the pool. The impact was shocking. Her sunglasses shattered and she felt something cut her cheek. The concrete was scorching hot from the sun, burning the side of her face. She heard Bella screaming her name. "Stop resisting!" Garrett yelled, even though Marion wasn't resisting. She wasn't doing anything except trying to breathe through the pain and shock. Torres was forcing her other arm behind her back now. She felt the cold metal of handcuffs clicking around her wrists. The concrete was so hot it felt like it was burning through her skin. She tried to turn her head and saw Bella running toward her, crying. "Stay back," Torres shouted at the little girl. A woman from the crowd at least had enough compassion to grab Bella and hold her. The child was sobbing, trying to pull away, reaching for Marion. "You're making a mistake," Marion managed to say, her cheek pressed against the burning concrete. "I'm a federal judge." "Yeah, and I'm the president," Garrett said, putting his knee on her back. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Marion's legal mind was racing despite the physical pain. They were arresting her without cause. They'd used excessive force. They'd made racist statements. All of it was being recorded by multiple witnesses. But in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that her 8-year-old niece was watching her aunt being treated like a criminal. "Please," Marion said. "My niece. She's just a child. Don't let her see this." But it was too late. Bella had seen everything. The little girl who'd been so happy just minutes ago was now hysterical, screaming for her aunt. The woman holding her looked uncomfortable, like she wanted to help but didn't know how. They hauled Marion to her feet. Her knees scraped against the concrete as they pulled her up. Blood from the cut on her cheek dripped onto her swimsuit cover-up. She could feel it running down toward her jaw. "Bella, baby, it's okay," Marion called out, trying to sound calm even though nothing was okay. "I need you to be brave for me. Call your mom, okay? Tell her what happened." "Quiet," Torres said, pushing her forward. They walked her past the entire pool. Every person there watched in silence. Some looked shocked. Some looked satisfied. A few looked guilty, like they knew this was wrong but weren't going to do anything about it. The phones kept recording. Marion tried to hold her head up, tried to maintain some dignity. But it was hard when you were handcuffed in a bathing suit cover-up, bleeding from your face. Being marched past dozens of people like you were dangerous. The manager, Richard, stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching with a smug expression. "Should have left when I asked you to verify your membership the first time," he said quietly as she passed. Marion looked him right in the eye. "I'll remember you," she said. They pushed her into the back of the patrol car. The seats were hard plastic, designed to be uncomfortable and easy to clean. They made her sit at an angle because of the handcuffs which dug into her wrists. Through the window she could see Bella still crying, still reaching for her. The woman who'd grabbed Bella was talking on her phone now, hopefully calling someone who could help, hopefully not just gossiping about what she'd seen. Officer Garrett got in the driver's seat. Torres took the passenger side. Neither of them looked at Marion. "Where are you taking me?" Marion asked. "Downtown booking," Garrett said. "You're being charged with trespassing, resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct." "I didn't resist arrest. I didn't do anything disorderly. I was complying with your orders." "That's not what our report will say," Torres said, looking straight ahead. The casual way he said it chilled Marion's blood. They were going to lie. They were going to write up a false report to justify what they'd done. She'd seen it happen in her courtroom before, officers who thought they could write whatever story suited them. But this time was different. This time there were witnesses, videos, evidence they couldn't control. "There were at least 20 people recording what happened," Marion said. "Your body cameras recorded it too." "Body cameras malfunction all the time," Garrett said with a shrug. "And witnesses remember things wrong. Funny how that works." They drove in silence for a while. Marion's face throbbed where she'd hit the concrete. Her wrists ached from the handcuffs. But worse than the physical pain was the emotional toll. The humiliation of being arrested in front of so many people. The trauma Bella must be experiencing. The fact that in 2025, she'd just been told to leave a pool because of the color of her skin. Her mind was already working, though, filing away details. Officer Garrett, badge number 2847. Officer Torres, badge number 3192. Richard, the manager. Riverside Community Pool. Time of arrest approximately 2:15 p.m. based on the sun's position. Multiple civilian witnesses with video recordings. Body cameras that malfunctioned. "You know what's interesting?" Marion said from the back seat. "I've presided over about 15 cases involving police misconduct. I've seen officers lose their jobs, their pensions, even go to prison for doing exactly what you both just did. Is that a threat?" Torres turned around to look at her. "No, it's just an observation. When they arrived at the station, they processed her like any other arrestee. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings inventoried. They took her phone, her keys, even the elastic band from her hair. They gave her a paper jumpsuit to change into because she was still in her swimsuit cover-up. The holding cell was cold and smelled like disinfectant and despair." Marion sat on the metal bench and waited. She'd seen these cells from the other side, when prisoners were brought before her for sentencing. She'd never imagined being in one herself. Hours passed. She asked repeatedly to make her phone call, but they kept saying they'd get to her eventually. She knew they were trying to make her uncomfortable, trying to make her regret standing up for herself. But Marion had learned patience in her years as a judge. She could wait. And while she waited, she thought about what would come next. The lawsuit she would file. The investigation she would demand. The justice she would seek. They had no idea who they'd arrested. They thought she was just another black woman they could intimidate and brutalize without consequences. They were wrong, and Marion was going to make sure they understood exactly how wrong they were. It was nearly 6 in the evening when Marion finally got to make her phone call. 4 hours in a holding cell. 4 hours of sitting on a cold metal bench while her wrists throbbed and her face swelled where she'd hit the concrete. They'd given her ice for her cheek at least after the third time she'd asked for it. She called her attorney, David Chen, who she'd known for almost 20 years. He answered on the second ring. "David, I need you downtown at the booking station. They arrested me." There was a pause. "Marion, Judge Hayes." "What are you talking about?" She explained everything quickly, keeping her voice steady. When she finished, David was quiet for a moment. "They arrested you at a pool for being black. That's what happened, yes. And they don't know you're a federal judge?" I told them. They didn't believe me. David made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't say anything else to anyone." True to his word, David arrived fast. Marion heard his voice in the hallway getting louder as he argued with someone. Then he was there, looking at her through the bars of the holding cell, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Your face," he said. "I know. They pushed me down on the concrete. An officer let her out, and David walked her through the release process. They returned her belongings, gave her paperwork about her court date for the trespassing and resisting arrest charges. The desk sergeant barely looked at her as he explained she was being released on her own recognizance. "We'll fight this," David said as they walked to his car. "We'll fight this and we'll win." I know. But Marion was thinking about more than just winning. She was thinking about Bella, who she'd finally been able to call from David's phone. Her sister had picked up the little girl from the pool, and Bella was safe at home. But her sister said Bella had cried for 2 hours straight and wouldn't eat dinner. "I traumatized her," Marion said quietly as David drove. "You didn't do anything. They did this." She watched her aunt get thrown on the ground and arrested. "That's going to stay with her." David glanced over. "You're not seriously blaming yourself for this?" Marion didn't answer. She looked out the window at the city passing by, people going about their normal Saturday evening. Having dinner, walking dogs, living their lives. None of them had been arrested today. None of them had been told they didn't belong somewhere because of their skin color. When David dropped her off at home, her sister Victoria was waiting on the porch. She rushed down the steps and pulled Marion into a hug. "Are you okay? Let me see your face." "Oh my God, Marion, I'm fine." "Where's Bella?" "Inside. She finally fell asleep on the couch." Victoria held Marion at arm's length, studying her. "What happened?" They went inside and Marion told the whole story again while Victoria made tea neither of them drank. When Marion finished, Victoria was shaking with anger. "We should call the news. We should call everyone. This can't just disappear." "It won't," Marion said. "Trust me." She was right about that. While she'd been in the holding cell, the videos had started spreading. The woman who'd held Bella at the pool, a schoolteacher named Patricia, had posted one of her videos online with a caption explaining what she'd witnessed. It had been shared thousands of times in just a few hours. Marion's phone, now returned to her, was flooded with messages. Colleagues, friends, other judges, lawyers she'd worked with, all asking if she was okay, if the videos were real, if she needed anything. She responded to a few, then put the phone down. She was exhausted. Every muscle in her body ached. But she needed to see Bella. The little girl was curled up on the couch, still in her bathing suit under a blanket. Her face was puffy from crying. Marion sat down carefully beside her, and Bella's eyes opened. "Auntie," she whispered. "I'm here, baby." Bella threw her arms around Marion's neck and started crying again. "I thought they were going to hurt you. I thought they were going to take you away forever. I'm okay. I'm right here." Marion held her niece close, feeling the little body shake with sobs. "I'm so sorry you had to see that. Why did they do it? We weren't doing anything wrong. How do you explain systemic racism to an 8-year-old? How do you tell a child that some people will treat her differently, worse just because of how she looks?" "Sometimes," Marion said slowly, "people make wrong choices. Those police officers made a very wrong choice today, but the important thing is that we're safe now." "Are they going to get in trouble?" "Yes," Marion said firmly. "They are." Over the next few days, the story exploded. What had started as a viral video became national news. Major outlets picked it up. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The hashtag Justice for Pool Arrest started trending, though most people still didn't know the woman in the videos was a federal judge. Marion had asked David to keep that detail private for now. She wanted the case judged on its own merits, not because of her position. She wanted people to be outraged because a black woman had been mistreated, not because a judge had been mistreated. But keeping that secret became harder as the attention grew. Reporters camped outside her house. Her neighbors were being interviewed. Someone found out her name and where she lived. On Tuesday, the police department held a press conference. The chief of police, a gray-haired man who looked exhausted, stood at a podium and announced that officers Garrett and Torres had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. "We take all allegations of misconduct seriously," he said, reading from a prepared statement. "We are reviewing all available evidence, including body camera footage and witness statements." A reporter shouted a question. "Is it true you told the victim this was a whites-only pool?" "We cannot comment on an ongoing investigation," the chief said. Marion watched the press conference from her living room. Victoria sat beside her, shaking her head. "Administrative leave, that means paid vacation." "For now," Marion said. The pool itself had been closed indefinitely. The recreation department that oversaw it announced a full review of its membership policies and practices. The manager, Richard, had been suspended. Former employees started coming forward with stories about being told to reject membership applications from people of color, or to call the police when certain people showed up. It turned out the whites-only policy had never been written down anywhere. It didn't need to be. It was enforced through 1,000 small actions. Applications that got lost, phone calls that never got returned, sudden price increases for certain applicants, and when those subtle methods failed, intimidation and police involvement. Marion spent hours with David preparing their legal strategy. They would sue the officers, the police department, the pool, and the recreation department. They would seek damages for civil rights violations, assault, false arrest, and emotional distress. "This is going to be big," David warned. "Once they find out you're a judge, it's going to get even bigger." "Are you ready for that?" "I don't have a choice," Marion said. "If I don't fight this, what message does that send? That they can do this to anyone?" On Wednesday, the Department of Justice announced it was opening an investigation into civil rights violations. The FBI got involved. Officers Garrett and Torres hired lawyers, expensive ones, and released statements through their attorneys claiming they'd acted appropriately and within their training. Marion finally sat down for an interview with a local news station. The reporter, a young woman named Lisa, handled it sensitively. "What went through your mind when the officers arrived?" Lisa asked. "I thought there must be some misunderstanding," Marion said. "I had my membership confirmation. I'd done everything right. I honestly believed that once I showed them the documentation, they'd apologize and leave." "When did you realize it wasn't going to end that way?" "When they said it was a whites-only facility. That's when I knew they weren't interested in my documentation." The interview aired that evening. Marion watched it with Victoria and Bella. The little girl had been quiet all week, not her usual bubbly self. She stayed close to Marion constantly, as if afraid her aunt might disappear again. "You did good," Victoria said when the interview ended. "You stayed calm. You told the truth." "It shouldn't have happened in the first place," Marion said. That night, Marion couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment when the officers pushed her down, when her face hit the concrete, when she heard Bella screaming. She got up and made tea, sat in her kitchen in the dark. Her phone buzzed. A text from Judge Peterson, her colleague. "Saw your interview. I'm so sorry this happened to you. The whole courthouse is talking about it." So people were starting to connect the dots, realizing who she was. By tomorrow, everyone would know. The judge who got arrested at a pool. The federal judge who got treated like a criminal. Thursday morning brought more news. The officer's body camera footage had been reviewed. Despite their claims that the cameras had malfunctioned, the footage was clear and complete. It showed everything. Marion complying with their orders. The officers using excessive force. The racist language. The police union issued a statement defending the officers, claiming they'd been responding to a legitimate complaint about a trespasser. But the videos told a different story. The truth was there for anyone to see. Marion went back to work on Friday, her first day back since the incident. She walked into the federal courthouse with her head high, despite the whispers, despite the stares. Her clerk looked like she'd been crying. "Judge Hayes, I'm so sorry about what happened." "Thank you, Katie." She had a hearing that afternoon, a pretrial conference for a civil case. Walking into her courtroom felt different now. She'd always commanded respect here, But now there was something else in how people looked at her. Pity, maybe, or recognition of a shared experience. The lawyers on both sides were professional, but she could tell they knew. Everyone knew. When she took the bench and looked out at the courtroom, she saw it in their faces. That evening, David called with news. The district attorney wants to drop all charges against you. Of course they do, Marion said. The videos make it clear I did nothing wrong. They're offering an apology too. An apology isn't enough. David, we proceed with the lawsuit. I figured you'd say that. Over the weekend, Marion tried to return to normal life. She took Bella to the park, though the little girl held her hand the entire time and jumped whenever she saw a police car. They baked cookies. They watched movies. Marion tried to help her niece feel safe again, but on Sunday evening, Victoria sat her down for a serious conversation. Bella had nightmares again last night. She's scared of police officers now. She flinches when she sees sirens. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Marion, I know you need to fight this, but think about what it's doing to her. I am thinking about her, Marion said. I'm thinking about the world she's growing up in. If I don't fight this, if I let them get away with it, what does that teach her? That some people can treat us however they want and face no consequences? She's 8 years old. She just wants her aunt to be safe. And I want her to live in a world where she's safe, where she doesn't have to fear the people who are supposed to protect her. Victoria wiped her eyes. Just be careful, please. Monday brought more developments. Officers Garrett and Torres were formally charged with civil rights violations, assault, and filing a false police report. The charges were serious, federal offenses that could mean years in prison. Their lawyers immediately started talking about plea deals, trying to negotiate lesser charges. But Marion had already made her position clear through David. No deals. This goes to trial, and that's when things got really interesting. Because when the case was assigned to a judge through the federal court's automated system, it landed on the desk of Judge Marion Hayes herself. Marion's clerk Katie brought her the case file on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after the pool incident. The young woman walked into chambers with a strange expression on her face, somewhere between shock and amusement. Judge Hayes, you need to see this. Marion looked up from the brief she was reading. Katie placed the file on her desk and stepped back, as if it might explode. United States of America versus Daniel Garrett and Michael Torres. The names made Marion's stomach drop. She opened the file and scanned the charges. Civil rights violations, assault, filing false police reports, conspiracy to deny constitutional rights. It came through the automated assignment system, Katie said quietly. I checked 3 times. It's random. It's legitimate. But Judge, you have to recuse yourself. Marion stared at the file. The universe had a sense of irony, apparently. The 2 officers who'd arrested her, humiliated her, traumatized her niece were now going to appear in her courtroom. Has anyone else seen this? Marion asked. Just me. I wanted to bring it to you first before I started the recusal paperwork. Marion opened her drawer and pulled out the ethics guidelines she kept there. She'd practically memorized them over the years, but she wanted to see the words in black and white. She read through the section on recusal, on conflicts of interest, on the appearance of impropriety. Katie, get me the ethics committee on the phone. For the next hour, Marion spoke with 3 different ethics advisors. She explained the situation, listened to their concerns, asked every question she could think of. When she hung up the final call, she sat in silence for a long moment. Katie hovered in the doorway. So we're filing the recusal motion? No, Marion said. I'm keeping the case. Katie's eyes went wide. Judge, I don't think that's a good idea. The ethics committee agrees with me. My personal experience with these officers doesn't create a conflict of interest. If anything, it gives me unique insight into the issues at stake. But the defense is going to go crazy. Let them, Marion said. I can be fair. I can judge this case based on the evidence and the law, nothing else. Katie looked doubtful but nodded. I'll get the case file processed. Word spread fast. By that afternoon, Marion's phone was ringing off the hook. Other judges calling to ask if she was serious. Lawyers gossiping about it. The media somehow found out within hours. And suddenly it was national news again. Judge to hear case against officers who arrested her, ran the headline on every major news site. The defense attorneys, 2 expensive lawyers from a big firm downtown, filed an emergency motion for recusal that same day. Marion read their arguments. She was biased. She had a personal vendetta. She couldn't possibly be fair. The appearance of impropriety alone required her removal. Marion called for a hearing the next morning. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with reporters, legal observers, and curious citizens. Officers Garrett and Torres sat at the defense table with their lawyers, both men looking pale and nervous. When Marion entered and took the bench, she watched their faces. The moment of recognition was almost comical. Garrett's mouth literally fell open. Torres grabbed his lawyer's arm and started whispering urgently. "All rise," the bailiff called. Marion settled into her chair and looked out at the courtroom. This was her domain. Here she held the power. Here she made the rules. "Let's address the defense motion for recusal," she said. "Counsel, you may proceed." The lead defense attorney, a man named William Bradford with silver hair and an expensive suit, stood up. "Your Honor, with all due respect, you cannot possibly hear this case. You are the alleged victim. You have a clear personal interest in the outcome." "Alleged victim?" Marion repeated. "Counselor, there's video evidence of your clients arresting me." "There's no alleged about it." Bradford's face reddened. "That's exactly my point, Your Honor. You've already formed conclusions about what happened. I've formed conclusions about what I personally experienced, yes. But this case isn't about my experience. This case is about whether your clients violated federal civil rights laws. Those are separate questions. The appearance of impropriety alone." "The appearance of impropriety," Marion interrupted, "would be if I refused to hear a case about civil rights violations because I've personally experienced civil rights violations. Should only judges who've never faced discrimination be allowed to hear discrimination cases? Should only judges who've never been victims of crimes hear criminal cases?" Bradford tried a different approach. "Your Honor, my clients are entitled to a fair trial before an impartial judge, and they will receive exactly that. I am capable of judging this case based solely on the evidence presented and the law as written. My personal experience doesn't change my ability to apply the law fairly." The prosecutor, a sharp woman from the Justice Department named Angela Rivera, stood up. "Your Honor, if I may, the government has full confidence in your ability to hear this case impartially." "Thank you, Ms. Rivera." Marion looked at Bradford. "Your motion is denied. I will be presiding over this trial. If you believe I show any bias during the proceedings, you may renew your motion at that time. But I assure you I will not." She banged her gavel. Garrett and Torres both looked sick. Their lawyers started whispering to them frantically. "The trial will begin in 2 weeks," Marion said. "Both sides will submit their witness lists and evidence by the end of this week. This court is adjourned." The next 2 weeks were tense. The defense tried every legal maneuver they could think of to delay the trial or get Marion removed. Every motion was denied. The media coverage was intense. Legal experts on TV debated whether Marion should hear the case. Some said she was being vindictive. Others said she was being brave. Marion ignored all of it. She prepared for the trial the way she prepared for every trial. She read every brief, every piece of evidence, every legal precedent. She wanted this to be the cleanest, most fair trial she'd ever presided over. Victoria called her the night before the trial started. "Are you sure about this?" "I'm sure. Bella still has nightmares, Marion." "If you're doing this for her." "I'm doing this for everyone who's ever been treated like they don't belong. Everyone who's been told they're less than. Everyone who's been brutalized by people who are supposed to protect them." The first day of trial arrived. The courtroom was packed again with extra security. Marion walked in to find every eye on her. She took the bench and looked out at the faces. Reporters, civil rights activists, police union representatives. And at the defense table, officers Garrett and Torres, both in suits instead of uniforms, both looking like they wanted to be anywhere else. "Good morning," Marion said. "Let's begin with jury selection." The process took 2 days. Both sides questioned potential jurors carefully. The defense tried to eliminate anyone who seemed sympathetic to civil rights issues. The prosecution tried to eliminate anyone who seemed overly supportive of police. Marion watched it all, making sure both sides played by the rules. Finally, they had 12 jurors and 2 alternates, a diverse group, different ages and backgrounds. Marion looked at them and felt cautiously hopeful. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, "you've been selected to hear a case about civil rights, about the use of force, about the responsibilities of law enforcement. You will see video evidence. You will hear from multiple witnesses. Your job is to determine, based solely on the evidence presented whether the defendants violated federal law. Opening statements began that afternoon. Angela Rivera stood up for the prosecution, confident and clear. The evidence will show that on a Saturday in July, Officers Garrett and Torres violated the civil rights of an innocent woman. They enforced illegal racial segregation at a public pool. They used excessive force during an arrest without probable cause. And then they lied about it in their official reports. This isn't a complicated case. The videos speak for themselves. Bradford stood up for the defense, trying to look confident. The evidence will show that my clients responded to a complaint about a trespasser. They attempted to de-escalate the situation. When the suspect became combative, they used appropriate force to effect an arrest. These are good officers with clean records who were doing their jobs. Over the next week, the prosecution presented their case. They showed the videos from multiple angles. Marion had seen them before, of course, but watching them again in court, with Garrett and Torres sitting right there, was surreal. She saw herself on the screen, calm and cooperative. She saw the officers approach with hostility already in their body language. She heard Garrett say the words "whites-only facility" clear as day. She watched herself try to reach for her phone and saw Torres grab her wrist. And then she watched herself fall, watched her face hit the concrete, heard Bella screaming in the background. Several jurors looked shocked. One woman covered her mouth. Marion kept her face neutral. She was the judge, not the victim. She had to stay professional. The prosecution called witness after witness. Pool patrons who'd recorded the incident. Patricia, the teacher who'd held Bella. The front desk attendant who testified about being told to make things difficult for black applicants. Former pool employees who described the unwritten racist policies. Then they called their expert witness, a retired police chief who'd reviewed the body camera footage and the officers' reports. Based on my 30 years of experience, he testified, the officers' use of force was excessive and unjustified. The victim was complying with their instructions. There was no reason to physically restrain her. Bradford cross-examined aggressively. But isn't it true that in the heat of the moment, officers have to make split-second decisions? These weren't split-second decisions. The officers had several minutes to assess the situation. They chose escalation over de-escalation. The defense presented their case the following week. They called other officers who testified about proper arrest procedures. They tried to portray Garrett and Torres as following their training. But their biggest problem was the video evidence. It contradicted almost everything they claimed. When Garrett took the stand, Bradford walked him through his version of events. Why did you arrest her? We received a complaint about a trespasser. We responded to that complaint. Did she seem cooperative? At first. But then she became argumentative and aggressive. Angela Rivera's cross-examination was devastating. She played the body camera footage alongside Garrett's testimony. Every claim he made was immediately contradicted by what was on screen. You testified that Ms. Hayes became aggressive. Can you point to the moment in this video where she acted aggressively? Garrett squirmed. She was reaching for something. Her phone, which she told you about. Her phone that was clearly visible on the chair. You can see it right here in the video, can't you? I suppose. And you testified that you didn't mention race. But we can all hear you say whites-only facility at timestamp 2:14, can't we? I was just repeating what the manager told us. So you enforced racial segregation based on what a pool manager told you, without verifying if it was legal? Garrett had no good answer for that. Torres's testimony went no better. His story kept changing under Rivera's questioning. The false statements in his police report were exposed one by one. The trial lasted 3 weeks total. Both sides gave their closing arguments on a Friday afternoon. The defendants violated clearly established civil rights, Rivera said. They enforced illegal segregation, used excessive force, and then lied to cover it up. The evidence is overwhelming. Justice requires a guilty verdict. Bradford made one last attempt. These officers made mistakes, yes, but mistakes aren't crimes. They believed they were doing their jobs. That's not criminal intent. Marion gave the jury their instructions. You must base your verdict solely on the evidence presented. Not on emotion. Not on your personal feelings about police or civil rights. Only on whether the prosecution has proven each element of the crimes charged beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Marion could read the verdict on their faces before the foreperson even spoke. On the count of civil rights violations, how do you find? Guilty, on the count of assault. Guilty, on the count of filing a false police report. Guilty, all counts, both defendants guilty across the board. The courtroom erupted in applause. Marion banged her gavel for order, but even she felt a sense of relief wash over her. Garrett put his face in his hands. Torres just stared straight ahead, looking numb. Sentencing will be scheduled in 2 weeks, Marion said. The defendants will remain free on bail until that time. This court is adjourned. The 2 weeks between the guilty verdict and sentencing were some of the longest of Marion's life. She reviewed the sentencing guidelines over and over, consulted with other judges, and spent long nights thinking about what justice really meant in this case. Victoria came to visit with Bella one evening. The little girl had been doing better lately, going to therapy, slowly recovering from the trauma she'd witnessed. But she still wasn't the same carefree child who'd been so excited about going to the pool that day. "Auntie Marion," Bella said quietly as they sat together on the couch. "Are those police officers going to jail?" Marion chose her words carefully. "Yes, sweetheart. They did something very wrong, and they have to face consequences for it." "Good," Bella said, with a fierceness that broke Marion's heart. No 8-year-old should have to feel that kind of anger. The night before sentencing, Marion barely slept. She kept thinking about the weight of what she was about to do. These were 2 men's lives in her hands. Yes, they'd hurt her. Yes, they'd traumatized her niece. Yes, they'd violated their oaths and abused their power. But she had to sentence them as a judge, not as their victim. She thought about all the times she'd sentenced people from the bench. The drug dealers, the white-collar criminals, the violent offenders. She'd always tried to balance justice with mercy, punishment with rehabilitation. This case couldn't be different just because it was personal, but it was different, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. At 3 in the morning, Marion gave up on sleep. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table with the sentencing guidelines spread out in front of her. The maximum sentence for civil rights violations was 10 years. For assault, it was 8 years. The guidelines suggested somewhere between 4 and 6 years for cases like this. Marion thought about Bella's nightmares, about the cut on her own face that had left a small scar, about every black person who'd been told they didn't belong somewhere, about every person who'd been brutalized by police and never gotten justice. And she thought about what her role was here. Not to get revenge, not to make herself feel better, but to send a message that this behavior would not be tolerated. The morning of sentencing arrived. Marion put on her robe and drove to the courthouse. The parking lot was packed with news vans and protesters and supporters all gathered outside. Security was tight. Katie met her in chambers. "The courtroom is full, standing room only, and there are hundreds of people outside watching on the screens we set up." Marion nodded. She reviewed her notes one final time, then walked out to the bench. The courtroom fell silent as she entered. Officers Garrett and Torres stood at the defense table, both looking like they hadn't slept either. Their families sat in the front row behind them. Garrett's wife was crying. Torres' mother had her hands clasped in prayer,